What's going on YouTube? It's the Middle School Math Man with a video for you on functions. So we're looking at the difference between a function and a relation and looking at different representations and deciding if they are representations of functions and why or why not. So the first question we're going to look at is, what is the difference between a function and a relation? So a relation is just a set of ordered pairs. So like if you look at the number or the example in number 2, the input of 1 and the output of 1, that is an ordered pair, 1, 1. The input of 2 and the output of 5 is an ordered pair. So in all these examples we're going to look at, we're looking at sets of ordered pairs, but these sets could also be functions. So functions, a good definition for functions is a relation that has all x values. So my x values, that's my input. The x values are always going to be on the left in the input. And those x values are paired with a unique output. In my output, those are going to be my y values. So we're going to discover this a little bit more in the next couple of examples, but that is a good definition for functions. A relation that has all x values, or the input, paired with a unique output, which are the y values. So let's look at number 2. Is the following mapping a function? Why or why not? Well, above I have the definition of a function, so we have to see if all of my x values, which is my input, all of my x values are paired with a unique output. So what we are looking for is we are looking for any repeated x values. So that would mean that the x values are not paired with a unique output if we have repeated x values. So if we're looking at the example here, each one of these arrows has a unique output. So there's not one arrow coming off two numbers in the input. If you think about it as like a vending machine, vending machines are good examples of functions actually. Like think about 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the input as choices on a vending machine. Say if you pressed a 4 and you wanted like a Diet Coke, if there were two arrows, if there were two things that were linked in the output to an input of 4, like that wouldn't make sense. You'd be, you may not get whatever choice you wanted in that vending machine. So this example is an example of a function. So yes, the following mapping is a function because each input is paired with one output. There are two arrows going to the 9 in the output, but that is okay. We can have repeated y values, but we cannot have repeated x values. So let's move on. Number 3. Is the following mapping a function? So just like the previous example. So what we're looking for is we're looking in our input and we're looking for repeated x values. So if it helps, we could actually write these as ordered pairs. So I have 1, 3. So an input of 1 gives me an output of 3. I have 2, 6. I have 3, 3. I have 4, 6, and I have 4, 8. So notice how there are 2 arrows coming off of the 4 in the input. And then I wrote them out here. There are 2 repeated x values. That right there tells us that that is not going to be a function. So no, the mapping is not a function because the input is 4, so we plugged in 4 to our function. The input of 4 is paired with 2 outputs. And those outputs were 6 and 8. So there is, each x value there does not have a unique output. 4 has 2 outputs. So each number in the input does not have a unique output. 4 has 2 different outputs, and that makes it not a function. Looking at the last example, we have -2, 0, -1, 3, -2, 6, and -1, 9. So again, what we're looking for, so x is the same thing as input. So we are looking for repeated x values. Obviously, we have some repeated x values. So it's not going to be a function. So I'm going to try to write small here. So no, the input -1 is paired with two outputs. So notice how -1 is repeated. And the 2 outputs it's paired with are 3 and 9. Also, the input -2 is also paired with 2 outputs. And hopefully you can recognize that the 2 outputs that -2 is paired with is 0 and 6. So that's going to make that table not a function because it has repeated x values.